There ain't no profits in protests. What up, though? I'm J-Hall, writer, cultural critic, and lover of waffles. And if you got a brunch spot that got waffles and no syrup, I am snitching on you. Now, Jemele Hill was recently on the Higher Learning podcast. She said a quote that kind of stood out to me. And that was, not only do athletes not understand their power, they have no interest in tapping into it, unquote. And then it led me to see what Joe Budden had to say about the state of hip hop being very silent about witnessing the ice race, where he says, quote, hip hop is pawns, wussies, and puppets. Now, he didn't say wussies, but you get my drift. Another quote, no time could that happen in hip hop not be in an uproar, unquote. Now, he's mentioning about the hip hop that he grew up on with KRS-One and the Chuck D's. They would have had something to say about the current state of affairs. Jemele Hill is mentioning about how athletes within the system of being pros in the NBA or NFL, and they're not utilizing their power and maximum, and how they can actually utilize that to have an advantage over the ownership. Now, I get all of that, but it also took me back to a time and space when I was growing up. Charles Barkley was never going to be a mentor or actual somebody I could look at as a role model, because he actually made a commercial that said, I am not your role model. So he never did anything that disappointed me. Whether he made me upset or not, I was never disappointed. Magic Johnson could disappoint me because Magic Johnson was always saying he was going to be a role model. Therefore, I've always walked in carrying myself by looking at someone with what they said to me, and that's how I would actually take it. But I'm also on the fence because I think about what Malcolm X said, and I'm paraphrasing when he said, only in the black community do they look at celebrities when it comes to leadership. And there's a lot of truth in that. And then I go back and I think about what happened in 2020, how there was a collective protest that was going on, and how everybody, after we witnessed the murder of George Floyd, felt like it was a revolution that was taking place. And then as soon as they let us back outside, everyone forgot, because we acted like kids that was on punishment for 6 straight summers, and we went outside and we ain't come back in. So a lot has happened, but the one thing you cannot mistake is that the ruling class that we see right now in the state affairs, they told us all of this was happening, and a lot of us simply just didn't care. But there's a risk factor that's involved when it comes to actually protesting. Let's not mistake that there's been athletes who have been banned, right? Like Colin Kaepernick, and athletes who have been heavily fined for their protests and the words that they spoke of. There's been artists where no one listened to and record labels have dropped. But there's also been artists that honestly, when they actually made a so-called protest record or an awareness record, I can feel in my heart it wasn't authentic. They were just doing it because they thought they had to do it. Therefore, I didn't really feel it. And I also seen athletes make certain speeches and contributions, and you can tell that their mind wasn't really into it. But there's also a lot of risk in trying to tell somebody who is chasing generational wealth that can change your life that you need to sacrifice that for the greater cause, especially when they're out there on their own. So I totally get that. But let's not mistake that. It's not always about the risk. A lot of it is about the money. It's about the full stomachs and not the empty stomachs. You don't just kill a revolution by shooting bullets. You also kill a revolution by passing out steaks. You ain't gonna be out there protesting if I give you a brand new Porsche walking. No, now you can drive. You ain't gonna be out there yelling, hold no sign, when I'm giving you plenty bottles of champagne to show up in your videos. This has always happened before when it comes to artists. They either want to hold on to their money, or they're too scared to kind of risk it because of a life and death matter, which there's some legitimate truth to that. And that right there would make them human. But the holding on to the money part, that makes you American.